You learned very early that the safest thing you could do was disappear. Not physically. You were right there at the dinner table, in the classroom, in the house. But you learned to make yourself smaller, quieter, less. Because when you took up space, something went wrong. Someone got annoyed. Someone looked away. Someone made you feel like your feelings were an inconvenience they hadn't signed up for. So you stopped showing. And now you're an adult who is very good at being fine, even when you're not, especially when you're not. Here's what nobody tells you about growing up unseen. It doesn't always look like neglect. Sometimes it looks like a parent who worked hard and provided everything except presence. Sometimes it looks like a house full of people where nobody ever asked you what was going on inside you. Sometimes it looks like being told you were too sensitive every time you felt something real. Sometimes it looks completely normal from the outside. That's the part that makes it so confusing, because you can't point to one big thing. You just have this quiet, persistent feeling that you were always slightly beside the point in your own story. Psychologists call this emotional neglect, and unlike physical neglect, it leaves no visible marks. Dr. Jonas Webb, who spent decades researching childhood emotional neglect, found that people who experienced it grow up not knowing how to identify what they feel, not trusting their own emotional responses, and building entire personalities around not needing anything from anyone. Sound familiar? Think about the last time someone asked you, "Are you okay?" and you said yes, were you? Think about the last time something hurt you, really hurt you, and your first instinct was not to tell anyone, not because you didn't want comfort, but because somewhere deep down you'd already decided, nobody actually wants to hold this with me. That decision wasn't made last year. It wasn't made last month. It was made when you were very young by a child who needed to be seen and kept being looked through instead. And that child made the only logical conclusion available: if they don't see me, maybe there's nothing worth seeing. You didn't develop trust issues. You developed survival logic. The problem is, you're still running it, at 20, at 30, at whatever age you are right now, watching this. Here's where I need to challenge you, because validation alone won't change anything. That child who disappeared to stay safe, they protected you. They did their job. But at some point, and this is the part that's uncomfortable, you stopped being that child. You became an adult with full agency, with the ability to choose differently, with the power to ask for what you need, and you're still hiding. Not because you have to, because it became who you are, because invisible felt safer than present. Because if you never fully show up, you never fully get rejected. It's an elegant defense. It's also slowly hollowing you out. How many relationships have you kept at arm's length? Not because they weren't safe, but because safety itself felt suspicious to you. How many times did someone try to get close, and you found a reason, conscious or not, to make sure they couldn't quite reach you? The wound from never being seen doesn't just make you hungry for connection, it makes you terrified of it. Both at the same time, that contradiction lives in you every single day. There's a concept in attachment theory called the invisible child, not a clinical term, but a pattern researchers observe in adults who grew up emotionally unseen. These individuals develop what's called a dismissive, avoidant attachment style. They learn to need less. They pride themselves on independence. They become the person everyone leans on and no one thinks to check on. And inside, quietly, consistently, they are starving. Not for attention, for something far more specific. For someone to look at them, the real them, the uncertain them, the contradictory them, and not look away. For someone to stay after seeing everything. You've been waiting for that your whole life. And the painful truth is you've probably pushed away more than one person who was willing to offer it because you didn't recognize it when it came. Because love without conditions looked like a trap your nervous system had never been taught to trust. Now here's the hard part. The part most people skip because it's easier to stay in the wound than to examine what you've built around it. At some point, and only you know when that point is, the story of never being seen stops being something that happened to you and starts being something you're doing to yourself. Every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're not, you are choosing invisibility. Every time you shrink in a room where you have something real to say, you are choosing invisibility. Every time you decide someone couldn't possibly understand before you've given them the chance to try, You are choosing invisibility. Your parents or whoever raised you did not see you the way you needed to be seen. That is real. That loss is real. You are allowed to grieve it completely, but they are not the ones keeping you invisible now. That part, the part happening today, this week, in your actual life, that is yours. And that means it can change. But only if you stop waiting for someone to find you and start considering what would it look like to let yourself be found. You are not broken, but you are not finished either. The child who was never seen learned to survive. Now it's time to learn something harder, how to be seen without running, how to let someone stay, how to believe, even slightly, that what's inside you is worth someone's full attention. Not because life gets easier after that, but because you have spent enough years being a ghost in your own story. The question isn't whether someone will ever truly see you. The question is, are you ready to stop hiding from the ones who already are? That answer lives in you. Not in this video, not in another person, in you. And only you know if you're actually ready to look at it.